Welcome. You're listening to a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast on Mental Health News Radio Network. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Laura Lee Binstock, host of a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast on Mental Health News Radio Network and anywhere you get your podcasts. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Sarah Maye, author of the debut memoir, She Journeys. Sarah's story is one of heartbreak, resilience, and transformation. When the life she imagined was suddenly shattered, Sarah found herself fighting for survival. Her journey led her across the country through deep inner work and ultimately to healing, wisdom, and freedom. Sarah, welcome to the show. I'm so grateful to have you on.
Thank you, Laura Lee. Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here. I'm so excited.
I'm really excited to dig into this. You know, your memoir begins with such raw devastation, your kind of expectations of a safe, happy marriage. Basically what many of us, I'm pretty sure everyone goes into a marriage thinking this is it. This is solid. Your husband, you were hoping that these vows would be honored like most people do. So when those expectations kind of unraveled, your life took a turn. And so can you take us back to that moment and what it felt like to have your world completely undone and everything you expected to be just not the way it was supposed to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I write about this very honestly in the book, but I was married young. I was 21. And so, yeah, just a baby, really, looking back, that seems so young. But, and my husband was also young. He was in the military, and I had known him from high school. So we did have a long relationship, a history there. But right, when you get married, or when I got married, I should say, I really truly believed, oh, this is my forever person, where I'm going to spend the rest of my life with him. I saw this future with him, and was really at a place in my life where I think I was looking to be saved, looking to be rescued. And I also grew up with these rescue fantasies, right? Very princess, Disney princess getting
Rapunzel.
rescued. Yeah, getting swept away. Love is this a whirlwind thing. And I jumped in with both feet. But I really did believe that the person that I was with, would be that forever person. And I trusted him and believed him and also committed to him, heart, mind, body, and soul for the rest of my life. I think like most people only had the intention to get married once, right?
Yeah.
And had a big white wedding, invited all our family and friends. And we were married for about a year and a half before he was deployed for 6 months. When he had his first affair. This isn't a huge spoiler alert. This is all in the book. But just getting to the point of your question of being betrayed more than once, and already growing up in a family where betrayal was modeled, it felt like devastation to me. I married the person that I promised myself I never would. How could I have done that? How could that have happened to me, right? And these questions of how did my world come undone in this way? And I would have categorized myself as codependent. And so when things did come undone like that, it felt like it was so personal, because I had my whole identity was wrapped up in being a wife and being with my husband for the rest of my life. So if I didn't have him, if I didn't have this marriage, who was I? What was I living for? And that was really visceral. I mean, that moment found me on the living room floor when I discovered his affair, hysterical, having a panic attack with a gun in my hand, because I really didn't see how I could live the rest of my life without this person. It was that rock bottom place that some of us have experienced, where everything falls away and we're not sure what the next moment or the next breath can even look like, or imagine, that there's a life after this devastation. And I was severely depressed for a few months. I know you talk a lot about mental health, and gosh, looking back, it can have the perspective of what that moment was gifting me. But in that moment, there's just no words for the pain and the devastation that we feel when our world crumbles like that. Maybe it's the loss of a child, maybe it's the loss of your partner, maybe it's the loss of a parent, whatever it is, that devastation, there's really no words for that pain. It's just a place we go to where it
Mm.
seems so dark that we're not sure we're going to make it through. And that's what it felt like for me. And at 23 years old, trying to reconcile what the rest of my life could be if I didn't have this person.
Wow. So what helped you get off the ground? What helped you
Yeah.
get up and say, I need to look for what's next in my life?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. I think in that moment, there was just pain and I couldn't see
Mhm.
past the pain. But I knew that ultimately I was so loved by other people in my life,
Yeah.
and that I really believe like community is our safety net. And so, I just imagined like if I wasn't here, what that would do to my family or to my friends or the people that did love me. And so ultimately I decided to get up off that floor and to try to make things work with my husband because that was also modeled to me in my parents' marriage.
Mm.
And honestly, things went from bad to worse. I couldn't have imagined that that was just the beginning of the devastation. And so part one of my book is kind of what follows that experience. And so it became clear in my marriage a few months after that that it was really about leaving in order to save my life or to save
Hmm.
both mine and my ex-husband's lives because things got so volatile, so dangerous, so abusive that it really became clear to me this could kill you if you don't leave.
Wow.
And so until I hit that rock bottom and had that moment of awareness, it was, I would have just stayed in the name of love, thinking that that was love. And I didn't know how wrong I was. But ultimately, I think just the love from others and also that there was something inside of me that I touched. Like I don't know if you've had this experience, Lorely, where you're just in the depths and there's some part of you, call it your soul, call it,
Hmm.
the deepest part of you that just says like, keep going, that
Yeah.
resilient part of us that's like, there's so much more. You have to stay, you have to hang on, you have to get through this. And I think my soul was really with me through those moments, like
Wow.
telling me, life is going to be so much more beautiful, even if you can't imagine it. And here it is, and it is so much more beautiful. But I think in those moments, we really discover what we're made of, and
Yeah.
we can come home and remember that part of us that tells us, keep going, keep going. It gets better. There's hope.
Wow. And you brought up such a good point. Community, the people you surround yourself with really help get you through that. It's really sometimes, you know, in the depth, in the pain, when you can't see past what you're in. Um, I know that all too well. Just, I've luckily I've survived a suicide attempt, which was my last suicide attempt, where it was
Mhm.
like I was so it was so rock bottom. I've had a lot of like times where I was like, okay, this is rock bottom. But
Mhm.
I didn't know what rock bottom was until I hit rock bottom and it was like there's nowhere else to go but to start working on myself. And that luckily was with the help of my husband and then his family. And then then once people kind of knew, they were like, okay, we're here for you. And I think in every situation, anyone who's dealt with trauma, that it's the community and the people around you are the ones that help you realize that you have so much more to live for. Even though
Yeah.
if you can't see it, like you were just saying. So in the aftermath, you kind of made a bold choice and you kind of packed up and you decided to hike, across the country, which incredible. But I want to know what led you to that first step and how did the journey really begin to transform you?
Yeah, beautiful question. Thank you. And I love that your husband helped you through. Like that's so beautiful
Mm.
that he was able to support you and initiate like this healing, with you and by your side. And I just like to your point about trauma, I really believe that when we're wounded, and have so much trauma, that relational healing and healing in relationship is
Mhm.
one of the most powerful things. It certainly was for me, like experiencing trauma in my marriage. One of the things that was most healing was being re-nurtured by my parents when I moved in with them
No.
after this cross-country road trip. And it was like the medicine to my spirit that I needed after being so
Yeah.
wounded by someone to be so loved and held and safe.
Yes.
So that importance of community and having people around you that have your back no matter what, right? No matter what
Hmm.
choices you've made or where you've ended up, like, oh, that can literally save our lives. So I'm so
Wow.
happy you had your husband and his family and know what that feels like to receive that and how life-saving it can be. So,
Yes.
but to your question, my parents were a huge inspiration to me. They are very adventurous. I grew up in a big family where travel was really encouraged, and I grew up backpacking with my brothers at 13. And so I grew up in the outdoors and grew up seeking adventure and loving the outdoors. But I'd never camped alone. Like that was a new experience. But I knew I would be fine. I had spent so much time in the outdoors, but still, it was a kind of a to be so severely depressed that you can barely like get out of bed or eat food or go about life to then decide like it was really just like what's the next right thing. I didn't have this vision
Right.
of like 5 months I'm going to be here and I'll be doing better. It was really like what is something that will get me out of bed this morning? And it
Hmm.
was so simple. It was like, oh, I'll buy a bathing suit for going to the Florida Keys to meet up with my mom and grandma. Like
Oh,
that got me out of bed, right? Like just having something to look forward to. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but trauma is so disempowering. And that's where this energy of victimhood came in for me was I
mm,
was so disempowered in my marriage that when I left, I really observed that anything that helped me feel more powerful was extremely like it brought me home to myself because I had been giving this power away, giving it away to this other person or to this situation. So doing yoga and being in my body and feeling like, oh, I
mm.
can do this pose. I'm strong. That was super empowering. Taking this trip alone, even though I would lie awake in my tent at night, like terrified of every sound, like ultimately it was really empowering because I was, hiking the Grand Canyon all alone and proving to
Wow.
myself how strong I was and setting up a tent on my own and navigating these experiences where I thought I was so weak before,
Yeah.
to have that experience of like, look how strong you are. Look at how much you love adventure, or, look at this beautiful sunset or sunrise. Like, can't you see how worthwhile it is to be here and how beautiful life is? And so it was
Yeah.
kind of like this relaunch back into the world and this first time of coming back to myself in a sense. It gave me the space and time to reflect and start to process everything that had happened because when we go through like traumatic experiences, there's a part of us that's just in survival, right? Shut down.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
And so it was kind of my coming back online after being so frozen. And I don't know exactly, I feel it feels inspired, like the fact that the stars aligned for me to do that. But gosh, I mean, I look back on that time in my life with so much fondness, and I'm just so proud of that girl, like who had the courage to do that, even though her heart was breaking. It was,
Yeah.
and so like the best piece of advice I would give to anyone who is in that position is to do something empowering, to do something that's a little scary with
Yeah.
with the intention of getting your power back.
I love that. And I was thinking when you were talking about being in your tent at night, because I feel like if you were just home and laying down, you'd probably just be stuck in your thoughts versus thinking about what's the noise that's going on out there and how am I, I'm just thinking about that because I think one of the things that was an issue for me, was just being lost in my own thoughts
Hmm.
and not really just being in the present. It was just in my head, and that was really hard. But I love that you brought up yoga because, in She Journeys, you describe moving through kind of so many stages, different stages of healing. Talked about sailing, and therapy, and you also talked about shamanic ceremony, which I also want to get
Yes.
into.
Yeah.
Um, what did you learn about yourself as you move through these different these different spaces?
Yeah, yeah, it's such a great question because I think that the healing path can look so different, right? There's no one size fits all, but it was really important for me to ask why not, and to try
Mm-hmm.
different things. I grew up very conservative Christian and so was closed off to a lot of things for most of my life that I perceived as like kind of like forbidden or
Mm,
off limits, But in discovering yoga and opening my mind a little bit and getting curious and asking like, well, why do I believe what I believe? Like what truly resonates with me, which are really
yes.
important questions.
Very important questions.
Yeah, I discovered like, oh, anything that feels to me like I'm picking up the pieces. Anything that resonates, anything that feels like medicine, why not explore it? And
Hmm.
so that led me on a really beautiful journey of shamanic ceremonies, of plant medicine, of breath work, of yoga, of spirituality, meditation, mindfulness, therapy, of course. So, and I'm not saying these are for everyone, but I'm just saying they worked for me and to
Hmm.
try different things and to see what works because we just don't know. And I found that for me personally, with trauma especially, I had to have the pairing of a somatic practice. Like I had
Hmm.
to talk therapy is wonderful. I'm a huge believer in therapy. But like you were saying, you would get stuck in your head.
Yes.
Like that's what it was for me. I could go around a story or asking why a million times in my head and not really get answers. And still like sitting on a therapist couch, it would be like the same. Whereas when I started doing somatic work or like, anything to do with the body, that's
Hmm.
when everything shifted because I
Yes.
realized like, oh, trauma is stored in our bodies, right? It's
Right, right.
memory in our cells. And so in order to release it, we can't just talk about it. We have to feel it. We have to let it go from our bodies too. And so plant medicine was huge for that for me. Breath work, EMDR, anything that
Mm,
helped me kind of be in my body and feel the grief, feel the pain, feel the betrayal, feel the anger, and release it. Because
yes.
if we don't, I truly believe these things will make us sick and will come out in some way later in life. And so I'm a huge believer in finding whatever your medicine is, but also really not underestimating the importance of working with our body and being in our body after trauma.
Yeah, yeah. After my last suicide attempt, my husband, we decided that I was just going to go into a treatment facility
Mm.
in Arizona, and they offered some psychedelic, or like ketamine was what they were offering there, but it was paired with somatic experiencing. Um, Among other, and EMDR, and while I didn't do the ketamine therapy there, the somatic and the EMDR just completely just transformed my life. But
Mm.
then it was once I got out and I started the podcast, because I was like, I never heard of somatic experiencing and that modality until I went into to treatment. And I was like, why are we just doing talk therapy when I feel like this was way more powerful? And so, in starting the podcast and talking a lot about that, I met somebody who did a therapist who did psychedelic work. And when I did that, that's when everything shifted for me. That's
Wow.
when it was like I really had to face the ugly truth of all of the trauma I've experienced. And even though that is scary, it was the most powerful shift in my life.
Mm.
And so I'm totally with you. And I think about, when I think about the story and everything you've said about, you were 21 and you got married and this is my identity, this wife, and now you're this healer. Like, did that? I mean, I can't, like, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like it's like you're a completely different person, but you're not. Like, right?
Mm.
I
Mhm.
mean, that's insane to think about.
Oh, it's so wild. Like if that girl could have seen where my life would end up, she would not, she'd have no, like, no way,
Right.
right? Absolutely no capacity to dream up the life that I'm living now, which is why I believe in like this loving force of the universe that has our best interest in mind always. But, that's a whole nother subject. But
I,
but yeah, it's really incredible to look back and see how if you can make those experiences mean something, if you can take some sort of meaning or decide that you'll use that experience to see how resilient you are, or
hmm
to love yourself on a deeper level or to have compassion on a deeper level. Like for me, we talk about Chiron, who's in astrology, is the wounded healer, and
hmm
how our wounds actually make us who we are, and they can make us more compassionate people, right? Because we're able to relate, like, oh, I see
Yeah.
that behavior is coming from this place of insecurity or
Yeah.
whatever it is, because I've been there. Like, I know, and I still
Yes.
have these
We
things
have the
come up.
experience.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful that all of those things that helped me heal along the way have become my offerings. So, like, intuition was incredibly big on my healing journey. And now I do intuitive readings for others, Reiki, yoga, like writing. Writing was incredibly healing. And now I have this book that I'm sharing
Ah,
with the world. So, like, I'm sure you can relate how, like, just talking, like, sharing your story, that's so healing, And
yeah.
then who hears that and whose life can be impacted by that. But just trusting that that's not our job to know. Our job is just to show up and do the work that we're called to do, right?
Right. Wow. I did read, there was at one point you sold everything and
Hmm.
you moved in with your, like, into a van with your husband. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So that's like skipping way ahead
Skipping
to,
way
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, to where I'm at now in life, which again, like
Okay.
that girl back then could never imagined, like, oh, you're gonna, be all into like woo-woo spirituality and you're gonna sell all your stuff and move into a van and travel around full time with your next husband. Like,
hmm
what? No. But that's what happened. So when the pandemic hit, I left my job. And this is also in the book, but my then boyfriend lost his job. And on one of our first dates, he asked me, like, would you ever live in a van? And I was like, yeah, like I love
Why not?
traveling. Yeah, it's always been on my bucket list, sure. And with the pandemic, we were like, what else are we gonna do? Let's do it. So we ended up buying a plumber's van, like just an empty shell of a van, and built it out ourselves into a camper.
Wow.
And we're like, okay, let's like do this for a couple months and just take a trip and see how it goes. And it was just supposed to be that. It was just supposed to be a couple months. But we ended up falling in love with it. I ended up falling in love with it, with the freedom and being out in nature and the minimalism and just being able
Mm,
to like go and camp wherever in these beautiful places in our beautiful country because we have such a gorgeous country.
hmm
And it was incredible. And it finally gave me the space and time in my life to start writing this book, which is a dream I
Yeah.
had for years. And so, a couple months go by and we're like, I don't really want to stop. Like, I want to keep going. And so,
Amazing.
yeah, we committed. So I ended up selling like all my furniture and my car and getting rid of most of my clothes and belongings. And now it's been 5 years. We've lived in a van full time, traveling around, and four of which I spent writing this book. And it's been such an incredible adventure. I've loved every minute. It's been so healing and so much fun, like such an adventure. And my husband also wrote a book in this time period. He's now my husband, so I'm
Mm.
happily remarried.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a dream come true, Lauralee, to be honest. It's been really
Oh,
beautiful.
I love that. You know that saying, life's a journey, not a destination, not the destination, but it's also not even the beginning. I guess beginning is getting started, but like your beginning is not where where you thought you'd end up. Like it was just the whole journey. And I love the title of your book, She Journeys.
Thank you.
It's wonderful. But I do want to ask, what do you hope that readers and our listeners, today will take away from She Journeys?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. I think if I could just share, at first when I started writing it, I was like, oh, I hope this will help people.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of problems writing. Like I couldn't really start. I felt super blocked. I didn't know where to begin. And then I was reading, I don't know if you've read Big Magic by Elizabeth
Oh,
Gilbert. It's all
no, but
about,
I will take
it's
take a look.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about creativity and creation. And I was reading the book, and she says, like, if you want to write to help people, that's beautiful, but please don't make that your sole intention because that's going to feel
Mm,
really heavy on us and
yeah.
we'll feel the weight of that. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Wow.
oh, interesting. Like, what if I just wrote this for me, like for my healing? And just like that, everything changed. And I was able to just start writing. It all flowed, it all started coming out. And I gave myself permission instead of filtering everything I was saying for an audience, just to be super raw and super honest. And I was reading old journal entries and going back to the past and really reliving the trauma in order to,
Wow.
yeah, in order to write about it and process in a cathartic way. And it really became, writing this book became an act of love for me and an act of discipline.
Mm.
And in order to help me heal deeper. And I absolutely did. And then, 4 or 5 versions later, it's a much more polished version that, like, I would be mortified for people to read my first draft.
Oh, I'm
It was really rough, but it's gotten to the point where now it's like, okay, I know this helped me so much. And I believe that when we share from our hearts and when we're authentic, that that's what resonates with other people. So that if there are other women who've experienced devastation, who've experienced heartbreak, divorce, like maybe there's something for them, in my story.
exactly.
And maybe there's something, I don't know what will be, but that will resonate with them or give them hope or help them to ask, like, why not? Why not try this thing if it feels good? And so I think that's just become my deepest prayer was that the healing journey has been the most beautiful thing of my life, that that's what
Hmm.
I hope for others, and that maybe my book can be supportive in some small way.
That's so beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think I love the title of your podcast. I think it's so beautiful
Thank
because
you.
moving from survivor to thriver, like that seems so attainable, I think, for some people, especially when we're in it, right? When we're in the trauma, when we're in the freeze response or whatever it is, or in the wound, really.
Yeah.
And just knowing, like looking back at, and the book is really about this, right? Moving from heartbreak to healing to homecoming. It's the same concept of moving through and
Yeah.
thriving is like, it's a big word. It's not just like, oh, I'm okay. It's like, I'm amazing. And that
Yeah.
life can be amazing on the other side of so much pain. And I think I'm curious to hear what you think about this, but when we go through such heart-rending experiences, it actually makes us so much more sensitive and opens up our hearts so much more so that there's this contrast. Like on the other side, beautiful things are really beautiful. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Because we have
Yes.
so much gratitude that we made it, that we're here, that we're alive. And so I guess I just want to let listeners know that, like, not only is it possible to get through the trauma and the pain, like a life beyond your wildest dreams could be waiting.
Yes. That is so well said because that is exactly, and when people ask me, like, what is it like, just from where you were to where I don't recognize who I was when I was in it because I just, I thought that this was it. This was my life. And there was a point where I succumbed to the fact that this is my life. I'm just sad and depressed and I don't see any way out. Like just the idea of it just seemed so lofty to like thrive. And actually the term survivor thriver was when I was in treatment. That is how my therapist, when were in group, she described herself as a trauma survivor thriver, and I was like, what is that? I want that. I want to be that
Yes.
person. And so that when she said that and I asked her and she's like, well, I was like, what is that? What is a trauma survivor thriver? She's like, what do you think that mean for you? And then it was just like, okay, that's what I need to strive for. I want to thrive. I don't want to, because I thought surviving was good enough. Like
Mm,
and the truth is you can thrive. And it's not, once you're surviving, it's so worth it. It's so worth
mhm. So worth it. And
it.
just taking that next step, right? Just getting up off the floor, just leaving the relationship, just going to treatment, right? Like
Yes.
just one thing at a time and slowly rebuild this life. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's so worthwhile.
It is so worthwhile. So worthwhile. I, highly recommend 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
Absolutely. Rave reviewed.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. She Journeys is such a powerful reminder that from wounds can come wisdom, and, from heartbreak can come homecoming. And, it's just what a powerful story. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Thanks. Well, for those listening, you can learn more about Sarah and her work as a yoga instructor, Reiki healer, and intuitive by visiting shejourneys.us. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
Shejourneys.us. I will also have that at the bottom of the screen and in the show notes, and we'll have a link to the memoir. She Journeys is available now, and we will have that info, like I said, in the show notes and on your screen, and we'll even have a clickable link so you can easily get there. Don't forget, you can visit traumasurvivorthriver.com to listen to past episodes and also the latest issue of Authentic Insider magazine, where you'll find powerful stories from survivors and thrivers like Sarah. You've been listening to a Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast on Mental Health News Radio Network. I'm Lori Lee Benstock. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Take care.